right. So we are going to get into some of our frequently asked questions and those questions that you all submitted while registering for the webinar. So I'll stop my screen share so we can talk through some of those. And yeah, I guess, Skelly, I'll let you start it out.
Yeah. Anybody on the call too, feel free to either put a question in or we can even bring you on video here if you want to chat, if you've had experience using TeamGenius or just what your experience has been in the past with your tryouts and evaluations. So the first thing here, so of our frequently asked questions that we've got is, and this one comes up all the time. How do I keep scores consistent and objective when we have a dozen more different evaluators, which is really common at tryouts, a lot of different coaches putting in scores and people having different ranges based on expectations. Number one thing here is, over explain the scoring rubric. So in our app, we have a way where we can build this in so coaches and evaluators can see what they're scoring based on. But that evaluator misalignment is the number one reason for poor team placement. So put the scale in writing. So have a 1 mean, in-house player, 5 is a B team player, 10 is a starter on the top team, and make sure the coaches or whoever's evaluating knows that that's what it means and what you're looking for. Another option that we talked about was that using named values. So having poor, below average, average, above average, elite is ways that you can score athletes instead of an actual score like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a good way to put that kind of feeling in words instead of just a score. And then if you have 3 or more evaluators, like if you got like 10 people or something, or even 5, you can set our system or however else you do it to drop the high and low scores on each criteria before averaging. So it gives you that more kind of true inner average of the athletes. And then everyone scores everyone. No evaluator owns their group. So it takes a little bit of setup before your tryouts, but making sure all the evaluators have eyes on all the players. And as you set it up, really setting it up so that you have, think about the amount of criteria you have and the amount of athletes and the amount of time you have in gym space, just so that you do have time to do the scoring in that way. So that's a lot. That's our number one most question.
Yeah, we just had a good question come in there. Yeah, Chris, is there a way to summarize mean, median data range for a specific evaluator so that you can identify potential data discrepancies? Really good question. We are able to create a mean or median or kind of that like remove best score and worst score or only save the best score. You can do things like that, but you can unfortunately do it by evaluator. We do have an AI analysis tool on the results page, so you might be able to get some of that data from that AI chatbot. I haven't personally tested that, so I don't want to overpromise anything, but I would try that. And yeah, that's a really good piece of feedback because I can see the value in that. We just haven't built that into the system quite yet.
We do have a lot of
Got
weighting
another.
options built into on the evaluators. I mean, where you can look at, you can set those Olympic style scoring, or you can set the weight of the criteria based on the session, the specific game, and you can even weight the evaluator within that. So if you've got head coaches versus assistant coaches versus, volunteers, you could have head coaches at a 10% weight, assistants at 5, and a outside person or volunteer at 1%. So there's a lot you can do with the weights too on how those scores roll together.
We just had a great question from Mark as well. He was asking about in TeamGenius, the tryout sessions. And Mark, we can absolutely chat about this offline. But typically in TeamGenius, you're creating one session for every score you want that player to have in each criteria. Usually in basketball tryouts, day one's going to have something like those objective tests. And they also could have some of the gameplay that you might get into. But usually day one is so drill heavy. Day two is more so gameplay when you can kind of start to create some separation among the skill levels. You don't want like your best kid in the whole program going against one of the weaker players. Just usually not the reality that you want to live in. Um, but yes, you wouldn't have like two shooting criteria. You would have day one and day two under evaluation schedule. And then you could have a scoring form attached to each of those days so that they do get one, not just one shooting criteria score. They would have two of those that would then average. And if there's further questions on that, we can definitely jump in after this and chat. So just email us and we'll get in touch.
I think on that multi-day too, one of the things we see is like if it's a 3-day tryout, a lot of times we'll see reshuffling of players based on skill level. So you've got a big enough grouping, like after, day one is like basic skills, day two might be the gameplay, and day three is where you've reshuffled the players to have the ones you think are going to be better players versus the other ones you think are better players to really get a feel of how they're playing at that level. So, and there's a lot of that.
Mhm.
I'd say in the younger groups, we don't see as much, but in the older groups of kids and more elite players, we see a lot of that, reshuffling for multiple days of tryouts where you look at a lot of gameplay, how they play with people at the level you think they're going to be at. So,
Yeah, and one last thing there too. I know there's plenty of organizations out there that they don't necessarily want two separate scores for those players on a shooting criteria or ball handling or things like that. They prefer just to have one score that those evaluators change from day one to day two. There's absolutely a time and place for that. So if you prefer, it's just personal preference. Do you want to have two separate scores, day one score and day two that average out? Or do you prefer that those evaluators on day two see their scores from day one and then change those scores as day two is going on? So I don't know that I have too many insights into the benefits of either. Sometimes day one scores aren't super accurate. Day two gives that evaluator time a second chance to adjust that score based on the true score for that player. But other people sort of believe that it's better to have a day one and a day two that average because some players are going to have a really good day one and then a poor day two. And that doesn't mean that they should be penalized extremely for day two. They should still be rewarded for their good performance on day one.